Hi all, your friendly tribal manifestor here. I wanted to share a talk that was given, part of the talk was given at High Desert Human Design Conference in 2025 on September 18th. Jonah and Terry for a moment had a conversation, and the key point that I enjoy from this excerpt is that is it possible to operate as an organization that is a stable, conscious fractal where everyone only operates from their strategy and authority? Whether or not you agree with either Terry or Jonah's perspective, I want to remind you that community is important for each of us as an individual human. Our psyche, our bodies, our emotions are built to thrive with others, whether one-on-one, in small groups, or in large groups. And I am using my platform here, Christina Talks Radio, Holistic Human Design on Facebook, and my website, holistichd.com, to kind of allow my community to see into what is going on around Jonah's new book, The Human Design Cult. Jonah is a friend of mine, as well as see into his inner workings and perception. I don't agree with everything Jonah says and does. We're all differentiated, but I also agree with a lot of what Jonah says and does. So take everything with a grain of salt, and I hope you enjoy the powerful possibility of contemplating what it would be like to operate in an organization that is stable, conscious, fractally, where everyone only operates from strategy and authority. If you get a sec to like and subscribe, I'd appreciate that as well.
So I would like to invite Terry to share some thoughts, and if you have anything you'd like to share at all. We just met 2 days ago, or yesterday, but Terry was the last one to sign up for the conference this year, and I'm so appreciative that you joined, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, I knew I had to be here. It was a journey, but so the first thing, and these are some like notes for more exploration, I suppose. One thing that was said is that systems cannot be copyrighted, and this reminded me of the Google API case, which is it's a legal thing, so we're in that realm, and that's related. If that's interesting to you, you can look into it and kind of nerd out on it, I suppose. But the sort of key points are my angle that everything is a corporation in terms of some kind of conspiracy theory flavored videos I've seen on YouTube that are like, it's a fascinating angle, but the way it applies here is that the corporation, like IHDS as a company itself, is made up of, I'm gonna start, a dinosaur fossil. It's a dinosaur fossil of the seven-centered psyche in terms of like spirit, I suppose, in terms of it's a system. And so the corporate structure is this remnant that's built off of, modeled after, like has decision-making processes that go into how a military is structured, and there's lots of implications for what it means to be really in a corporation and into it. But ultimately, IHDS is run as a corporation, as a money-making operation, and as Ross said, like the money-making thing, money is the way that we can do the experiment. It facilitates the experiment, and just in terms of like cult versus corporation, as this sort of cult is the abstract side of the collective shadow perhaps being expressed, and then the corporation is the logical side of this collective.
I love that. It's like the belief component, the squishy emotional component versus the sort of the structure, just the actual.
Yeah.
That's a really great insight.
Yeah, and then underneath the tribe, the tribal circuitry is driving things, and other circuitry, individual circuitry is getting in the way, and that's politics, right? Corporate politics.
Gossipy generators.
Yeah.
Sorry. I love this. I think that just that model itself is such a cool approach to it.
And so there's some big picture questions that I'm posing for this as a transitional phase for nine-centered human consciousness, which is it possible to operate an organization that is a stable consciousness fractal where everyone only operates from strategy and authority? Like we don't, and we have agreements not to do violence. Like, can we take anybody in and accept them and allow them to get comfortable, and like, but then we start using like, anyway, it's like as I think through this, that it becomes, this is why I'm not here to answer the question, but I'm here more to pose the angle of, can we design an open source experiment for, a theoretical law that has some purpose that we don't have to worry about money for an experimental period? Yeah, like starting with human design, like concrete jargon. Because, yeah.
I love open source experiment, and something that kind of I thought of, so I haven't put them online yet, but I did a video series called Deconstructing Human Design, where I take the work of Jacques and sort of apply some of his. He would look at very difficult questions in philosophy, and he wouldn't try to resolve them. He would call them aporias, which is a Greek word which basically means kind of a block, or it's like a roadblock, but it's at the heart of a paradox. Usually you would say it's an aporia. And he has one in particular, this is Jacques Derrida, which is the paradox of hospitality, which is that to have hospitality, you have to allow anyone in, but if you allow anyone in, you even allow inhospitable people in. So then you have to define, we only allow other hospitable people. And so it's like, it gets into these paradoxes of law. Like, we're like, okay, can we live as a society not committing violence? Well, what do we do with those who commit violence? Do we commit violence to them? So there's all of these paradoxical positions that he explores, and I also don't have an answer. It's more just, I think this is a very important, not just for human design, but for humanity, question of how do we remain open to the other, and how do we allow the other while also having principles that we hope that the other also shares, because it's very hard if you're hospitable and then you bring somebody in and they're not hospitable, and how do you navigate that? So there's just these tensions inherent in the human project.
Yeah, and they're all coming up in this transitional period of nine-centered humanity, and it's the mirror appearing, the potential for the mirror of the cult as opposed to the corporation, as opposed to the militaristic, command and control structure, where it was, these things emerged when the vast majority of people were reflectors, right? So from the Manifestor naturally just found their way to the top, usually his way, but maybe even that's not true. And the, generators, manifesting generators were doing things, and the reflectors were everywhere. So it became, it's like, in a funny way, the military was almost designed for, not so different from having like a herd of animals or like sled dogs or something. So, but there's the core thing going back to money and the experiment, because that's what everybody's, tripped up on. That's what I'm, processing as I left my job a while, like 10 months ago, is the difference between a cult and a corporation is that a cult is a money sink. A corporation is a money pump. Right. And but then the money is part of this imaginary thing, and it used to be based in gold, and now it's just based on the ability to do massive violence to everybody by the promise of the government. And that's where you have the paradox of the good businessman. Like, a businessman exists within a contextual structure that has violence separated, and so everybody can kind of relax. We're doing business.
Capitalism with a human face, in a way.
Yeah, but it's the implication of, like, having organized violence, and you have organized chillness and relaxation, and then you can forget to talk through all the agreements, and then you have rightness coming into the right cognition coming into the frame, and that makes business harder to do. It makes it harder to write up agreements, because you have to have people that are good at asking the questions and like processing and getting it all down. But that's to fit into a 7-centered model, and we don't. So, but the corporation being a money pump, it forces accountability to the outside. Like, if it doesn't make money, it dissolves. A cult, it's just it's a temporary, like, fractal thing that is maybe associated with this is kind of dark, but like a shadow expression, like flaring up before it dies out, as in the cult leader, like doing its thing, burning and attracting people like flies to the aura or whatever, and the storyline, and like playing with the shadows and all that stuff. And that's what the corporation has had to do in the propaganda making, and that's what Ra used to do. That was he worked in the ad business, right? So he was at some level maybe just intuiting all of this like tension, and he wasn't going to, like, he was just gonna not work that problem and not put human design in a place where it could be mixed with astrology and proven out and like cross-associated, because then the billionaires get access to it, because JP Morgan said, according to an internet quote, billionaires use astrology, millionaires do not use astrology. And I've seen people on TikTok, like astrologers, talking about this experience too. And then you can't pose it to the scientific research community, because that's all within the umbrella structure of, modern industrial behavior. Because then it'll be co-opted and then used for insanely powerful propaganda.
Well, what I'm hearing, this is, I really like your worldview or worldviews, because it's getting at the tension of postmodernism. Like I mentioned Derrida a minute ago, and he's a post-structuralist, kind of postmodern thinker. But also there's now a movement in the last 15 years started by Timotheus Vermeulen called metamodernism. And metamodernism is like, what is after postmodernism? And I think you're raising these questions. You are raising the question of like, okay, we understand that there is organized violence being perpetuated through this capitalism with the human face, and there's sort of ideological structures in place and all of these things. But we can't just take a sort of removed, ironic detachment from it like a lot of the postmodern thinkers did. It's more, looking at these questions seriously and really engaging with them. So yeah. I really like that. Do you have any other comments or questions you'd like to share? And then
there's a couple of, I don't know if I'll try to just skip over them so that I don't go into take too much time.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Anything do you think that people should hear?
So, this is just a reminder of like the Ra's sort of clarion call to not believe anything that, like, don't believe anything I say. Don't believe what I say. Like, try it out for yourself. Like, he's minding his own business, showing up and, hanging out and telling stories, right? And so the business is happening the way it logically will with people who are experienced. And then you get the natural outcroppings of a transauric form, which has the information energy flow of a manifesting generator. And then so you get a closed off, unaccountable blob that is just saying, no, no, no. And it's like, it's got a little anger because it's manifested, but it's just, that's the boundary. And then it's just responding, and we're all getting frustrated by it.
Yeah, it sort of takes on a life of its own, you're saying, as well. And I like this idea. One final, I know, we could do our own podcast. Bruno Latour has something called actor network theory, ANT or ANT, and he actually coined the term actant, because actor we tend to think is a person, but an actant could be like cancer on a family, and that is something that acts on that family, or a tornado on a small town. And as you're talking about these transauric forms and the sort of something that's bigger than any individual that takes on a life of its own, I think that's also, it's interesting that different theorists and philosophers have approached these questions, and I would mention actor network theory. And the concept of the actant is like, it's bigger than any one person. It's sort of this field, we could say.
And then I have more, but I'll just stick with this one last thing. I saw a description, an explanation of the concept of the egregore, which is, a tarot card, but I've heard it expressed as like the Pope is an egregore, and the egregore card used to have, the Hierophant.
The Hierophant, sure. And he kind of has a Pope hat a little bit. And some of them anyway. And
I'm drawing the parallel here to say, like, the idea that Ra passing was like significantly preceded by not getting tithes, and that the whole thing of tithing being a seven-centered construct where you had whatever fraction of people that were actually manifestors, like channeling the cosmos and making structures for people to operate successfully under, like that was his role. And there's a game theory thought process that I see of like, I thought we were cool, man. Like, I know I put on this face and like, I do the madman thing where I write, heretical stuff, and I say things to stir shit up in the public, like that quote where he said people were, stealing his stuff. There's an episode in Mad Men where this happens, or like where they call out a customer that left and whatever. But it's a calculated thing because it's propaganda. It's a propaganda mill, and everything is calculated and pretty strategic in that sense. So, the idea that he was functioning as an egregore, as a hierophant, as like the egregore, is like the thing that's feeding on the energy of the Wa. And as soon as the Wa has like breakage in terms of like, okay, this wasn't part of the agreement, but like you're not doing well enough that you can't do this chunk every year. And then there's colleges that do like a 2% annual salary thing, and maybe that's a model, I don't know, and then maybe money's going to go away.
No, these are really interesting ideas and getting at. I mean, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like we could have a podcast. I have a lot more to say from the philosophical approaches, but yeah, just from what you're thinking about is sort of these structural questions. Yeah. So I appreciate it.
Thanks for checking out my YouTube channel. I would so appreciate if you liked and subscribed if any of this called to you today. Check me out on social media, Holistic Human Design. I also have a Facebook group, Human Design Parents, and Human Design Study Group. If you want to reach out to me one-on-one, my website is holistichd.com. And I hope you are enjoying the expansive experiences as we go into the 2027 epoch shift as a community in human design. Much love.